Richard Foundation in Richard, Louisiana. I didn't know it was Richard, Louisiana.
So it's Richard, the
Richard.
community of Richard, but the address is Church Point.
Okay, sorry, Church Point, okay. But I'm gonna leave this now up to Nanette Reiners to let us know more about our little Cajun saint.
Before we get started, I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all a little information right here. These packets right here are blessed prayer cards. Anytime you get one like this, they're blessed because they don't leave the church until Father blesses them. You're welcome to take as many as you need. And if you need and you can't put your hands on it, I'm gonna leave these cards up here. They have our email address, but the guy that did our cards, he forgot to put foundation after Charlene Richard. So if you use this, it's Charlene Richard Foundation at gmail.com. I couldn't see myself throwing over 1,000 cards, so I just wrote the foundation on. You're welcome to take these, and my name and number's on there, so you can give me a call. Also, I'll put some postcards or some index cards and ink pens. If any of y'all have some special intentions or intentions y'all want prayers for, if you write them on this and put them in this bag, when I get back home and get to the graveyard, I'll put them on her grave. And every year at her healing mass, which will be August 11th, it's a Monday, Father blesses all the petitions and prayers that come through. So I'll put it on her grave, and then we'll pick it up whenever we have her mass. Every year her mass was the closest, her death anniversary mass was the closest Friday to her death day. But because she's in the canonization process, and if she's canonized, she'll have her own Saints' Day, our pastor said, we're gonna start training the people that it's gonna always be on August 11th, unless it falls on a weekend where they have to do weekend masses. So this year, it's August 11th at 6 o'clock, and it's on a Monday. Everybody's welcome to come. We fill the church hall, and some people are still standing outside. What church? St. Edward's in Richard. Thank you. It's kind of between, you have Rain, Church Point, Eunice, and Crowley, and it's kind of right there in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and start, tell you a little bit about myself. I'm married to John Reiners. We have 3 kids. And the way I became president was Bonnie Broussard, who worked for the diocese, and with Father Brennan, who did a lot with Charlene. When she decided she was ready to retire, and that was getting a little bit complicated because she was just used to the easy stuff, she said, it's getting a little bit overwhelming. She called me one day, and I worked for the city of Lafayette, and I was on the road doing road counts, and she asked me if I would give some consideration to being the president. And I really didn't know anything, but Charlene was a little girl from Richard that died. But something told me I had to take this on, you know. And so I did. And my whole family, my mom, this is my mom, Madeline, we all had kind of a devotion to Charlene. My dad always called her his little girl. And I'll tell you the story about that later. But it's been such an honor, and I've met people all over the world. I've talked to people. I've mailed some of these prayer cards to Brazil, Singapore, all over the United States. It wasn't until I had to mail them there that I knew you needed an international stamp to mail overseas. So she's teaching me as I go, and I'm still in training. Most of the time, Charlene's the second of 10 children, and her oldest brother is still living, and him and his wife would go and he would give talks, but their health, he's either 79 or 80, and their health, him and his wife's health hasn't been too good, so I'm still in training, trying to learn stuff from him. But I felt as president, I don't just collect donations, I need to get out and talk to people. And so that's what, my mission is, to, when I can, to go and spread her word. So I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about Charlene, and if y'all have any questions, y'all can ask. And like I said, this is kind of out of the box for me because I was never one to get up in front of people, but she's put me where I need to be. Charlene was born January 13th, of 1947. She died August 11th of 1959. She was the second of 10 children. And any of y'all went to her grave? If any of y'all go to her grave, look at the two graves behind her. It's her mom and daddy. And Jesus had a plan probably way back then because her mom's name is Mary, her daddy's name is Joseph. So it's weird. It's really weird that Mary and Joseph are behind Charlene's grave. And I just learned that as many times as I've gone, I've just noticed that not that long ago. And then on this side, the right side, when you're facing her grave, it's her younger brother that she was his godmother, and he died in an automobile accident. But they lived in Acadia Parish by Church Point. But then when Charlene was in the 4th grade, they moved to Reshore. And if you go to the church in Reshore, the school, we don't even have a caution light. It's so small. But if you at the church, if you look to the far corner, that's the school Charlene Reshore went to. So the school is still standing today. At school, she played basketball, a lot of sports, but she liked basketball. She was the basketball captain. And John Dale says she hated to lose. So if they happened to lose, she always wanted to play that team again because she said next time we play, we're going to beat them. And John Dale says as much as she was a holy little child, she was very mischievous. And he recalls one day when they were playing and climbing the crepe myrtle tree, she fell and broke her arm. So he went and told his mom, and they brought her to the hospital. They fixed her broken arm. And so the next day they're playing outside. John Dale says, guess where she was? In the crepe myrtle tree with the cast on her arm. So he said, I'm going to run and tell mom. And she said, you better not. Anyway, she made her first communion when she was 10 years old. Her and her siblings were very close, and she was probably the closest to her grandmother, the way John Dale talks. And each of the siblings took turns staying at the grandmother's house. But when it was one of the siblings' turn, Charlene would always bribe them to do something for them so that she could take their place at the grandmother's house. Because it's pretty much her grandmother that kind of shaped her religious background and stuff. And it was her grandmother that she asked. Charlene had a thing for Saint Therese, so she'd always ask her grandmother if she thought she could be like Saint Therese, and her grandmother would always say, anybody can be like the saints, you just have to live a holy life. They always prayed the rosary every night, and John Dale says she would always go light the candles and get the rosary and stuff and get them ready and make the other siblings calm down when it was time to say the rosary. A lot of times after supper, John Dale said she would make her mom go relax and rest, and she would clean the kitchen and stuff. And before when her mama had fallen asleep, she'd make a fresh pot of coffee and wake her mama up with a fresh pot of coffee after the kitchen was cleaned and stuff. She was a very sports enthusiast, and her and John Dale, when they had summer religion or Bible study, her and John Dale, her oldest brother, would write skits, and then they would perform in front of the people that were there for the Bible study. Her nickname was Charlie Brown, and I asked one of her brothers, and he said, you have to ask John Dale, because I don't know why she's nicknamed Charlie Brown, so I still haven't found that out. She was in anything they had at the church that children could join, she joined. She was an active junior Catholic daughter. She liked horses. She always took up for the underdog. And John Dale will say, one day on the school bus, they have this little girl or a family that moved into the neighborhood, and she was even poorer than them. The little girl's hair was always oily and matted. Her clothes was all torn. It looked like the cotton sock dresses or something they would make with the sacks. And so when she got on the bus, all the kids were teasing her. And so Charlene went to the bus driver and asked what he was going to do about that. And he said, I'm not going to do nothing, go back and sit down. Well, on the way back to her seat, she said, if you're not going to do nothing, I will. Her mom used to let her have sock hop dances, and her favorite was Elvis. So her mom would make Kool-Aid and cookies,
and she let her, Charlene invite friends over for sock hop. So on the bus, she told those kids that were teasing this little girl that if they didn't stop teasing this little girl, they weren't gonna be invited to our sock hop dance, so everybody became the little girl's friend. And then, that evening, Charlene went home, and John Dale said they didn't have much clothes and stuff, but she asked her mama if she could give one of her dresses to this little girl, so she did. I don't know how many of you know, or if you even know, but there's a story on Unsolved Mysteries on Charlene. So if you look up, Google Unsolved Mysteries, there's a story about Charlene. And one of the ladies that's come to her grave many, many times, she lived in New York, and she went home for lunch one day, and she had some kind of sickness, I'm not sure what. You hate to ask people because you don't know how they feel about that. But she went home for lunch, and she had TV on while she's eating lunch, and she saw the story about Charlene on Unsolved Mysteries. She said, I right away called my mom, said, Mom, can you keep my kids? She flew down here to visit Charlene's grave. She prayed and prayed and prayed, and she's cured. We have another one, and it's in one of the books. I don't know, no, it's not in this book here, but it's a book by Barbara Gutierrez, and it's out of print right now. I'm trying to get her son to give me the copyrights because they don't want to have anything to do about printing it. But there's a story in there about this one girl. She had cancer, and every Sunday her and her mom and daddy would come to reshore to the grave. And that particular Sunday, they had to pick her out of her bed, put her in the car, and on the way to reshore, she got really sick, so the daddy said, we can turn around. She says, no, we have to go. Well, when they got to the graveyard, to Charlene's grave, they had to pick her up out of the car, and they brought her to the grave. Well, the daddy said her color, she was white like a brand new pair of white tennis shoes. He said after they prayed as a family, he stood back and let his wife and the daughter pray. After she prayed, she traced Charlene's name on the headstone. She was able to, he said her color came back and she walked by herself back to the car. That's, to anybody, that would be a miracle, but because she had some kind of medical help and stuff and treatment, it's not one they can use. Another one was, this lady delivered her baby, and the doctor said the baby was mongoloid. And the family was asking, how they could tell. And they said something with the ears set back, and everybody's got 3 lines on their hands. I never noticed that until I heard this story. Well, this little girl had 1, so the doctor said she was mongoloid. Well, when the pediatrician came in that night or early morning, he did some testing on the little girl, and the family had prayed to Charlene. He did some tests, and he told the mom, he says, I don't know who told you that, but there's nothing wrong with your baby. That lady is a nun working in Africa. And the one that walked away from the grave that traced her name, she's married and has kids. I don't know how many of y'all might have seen the story about Sophie this past year. She's from New York also, and the doctors had told her when she was pregnant that the baby had, I think, a brain tumor or something. And so she came down from New York here, and she delivered the baby December the 27th, right after Christmas. And they knew what the test had showed, so they automatically took the baby to the NICU and did the test and all that. And the baby was fine. There was no sign of anything. So she's supposed to come down with the baby and her family in August of this year for the Mass. But coming back to Charlene, she was at school and she started fainting and passing out and stuff, so that they called Charlene's mom and daddy, and they took her to the doctor, I think in Eunice, and he did a little bit of test, and he said, we need to get her to the hospital. And so they said, okay, he said, well, I'm gonna drive her there. And so the family said, well, we can drive her, we have a vehicle. He says, no, he said, y'all gonna have to find a parking spot. I have a designated parking spot, so I'll bring her. So he brought Charlene to the hospital. And they did more tests and found out she had leukemia and stuff. Well, they knew she was dying. And so they told the parents that she was gonna be dying soon. And she ended up dying 13 days after she was diagnosed. But the parents couldn't find it upon themselves to tell their daughter she was dying. So at the time, Father Brennan was the chaplain, and he's the one that wrote the book that's on the table. And so he told him he would do it. He had never done it before, but he was gonna do it. So when he walked into Charlene's room, he says, "Charlene," and introduced himself. He says, I'm here to tell you something. And she says, "Yes, a pretty lady dressed in white's gonna come and take me home." And so, and she says, "I'll tell her that you said hello." So from that day on, every day that Father Brennan would visit her, it was always, who am I to suffer for today? It was never about the pain she was in. And John Dale said later after she died, I don't know how they found out, but a lot of times the medicine she was supposed to be getting, somebody else got. So she suffered and never complained, and a lot of times she didn't have the medicine that she was supposed to be given. When they did the closing at the Dyson level, and I can't remember, it was 2 years ago, I think, but they had it outside, and I can't tell you how many people were there. We were using golf carts and stuff. People had parked down the road and we were shuffling back and forth. But the documents that were in the 3 boxes that went to Rome, before they could do anything else, after they opened the boxes at Rome, they had to bind everything before they could find out, look through it and make sure everything was there. So right now, Charlene has 6 books in the archives in Rome with all the other saints. So she's up there with St. Therese, St. Jude, St. Anthony, all of them. And so that has a lot to say, and we know she's our little Cajun saint if they don't find it to canonize her. But they have a house in Thailand that is named after her. And that was started by Father Michael Shea and Deacon Reggie Bollick from back home helped to get this started. And it's a house that abandoned children and children with AIDS and all that. They take care of these kids and try to teach them and try to give them as normal a life as they can. They also, since then, have built little communities in Venezuela and Colombia. And the deacon that's from St. Jude's in Lafayette visits often and asks them to send me something saying what they do. And through the mission of using Charlene and stuff, they have gotten a lot of these kids to want to be baptized, want to make their first communion, want to make their confirmation. So even though she's not here, she's working all over the place. And I know her brother could tell y'all a lot more, but I'm, like I said, tell everybody I'm still in training, trying to learn from him. We are working, there's a sculpture out of New York that is working on a statue. So I'm gonna leave this up here, but this is the statue. It's gonna be a bronze statue. And right now, the church is working with the diocese and with the state of Louisiana to do a rose garden for Charlene. When people go through the canonization process, their body becomes part of the church. So her body belongs to the church, but because people all over the world know where she's at in Richard and come visit her, the family they gave them the right to own the body, but they ask that she stays buried where she's at. So they're working, like I said, with the state and the diocese to plan a rose garden that's gonna in a canopy area with fans and lights. And it's gonna be between the church and the rectory. And they're gonna move her body from where it's at now to there, because 24 hours, 7 days a week, people are praying. Father has a little dog, and he says 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, he can be letting the dog out to potty, and there's always somebody at the grave. And I've witnessed that when I go to the church hall to do something at the office, if somebody's there, sometimes I'll stop because not all of them go to the church and can find the prayer cards. So I try to stop and see if they need some. I think the miracle that they're looking at, the first miracle, because you need several of them. The first one is, they had a lady in Lafayette that had COVID, and the doctors had told the family that there was nothing else they could do for her. And so the family took her off the ventilator, knowing that at the time ventilators were needed a lot. And so they took her off the ventilator and they prayed and stuff. Just, it sounds ugly, but just waiting for her to, finish dying. Well, her color came back after the family prayed to Charlene, and she's still living today. And that's what the doctors did because they took her off the machine. So that's the miracle they're looking at now. She is a servant of God right now, but they're doing the fine tuning of all the documents and stuff. And next step is venerable. And I was told that when they do that, if she is declared venerable, it will be done back home. Somebody from Rome will come here. So if that happens, it's going to be standing room only, because in fact, we were going to do it at the church in Richard by the graveyard she's buried in, but the church in Church Point is a lot bigger, so they're going to probably do it in Church Point. Any questions?
Yes.
I have a question. So at what point, when a person is up for canonization, venerable, the first step, do they exhume the body?
Her body was exhumed.
It was.
It was. And everybody's wondering what condition it is, because a lot of the saints are incorruptible.
Yeah.
But because of our weather here, and her in a wooden casket,
Yeah.
they had to pump the water out before they could take her out. And so, one of her sisters came to one of the talks, and somebody was asking her about that, and that was the first time I heard that. And she said, the first time I met my sister was when they exhumed her. So she met her sister's bones,
Yeah.
And we do have these that we just started. The first posture, each step you go in the canonization process, you're supposed to get a new set of people to work on it. And so the first postulator was a man, and he wanted us to cut up the altar cloth that her body was put on and give it out to people. But our hopes is to have a museum one day, and so if we cut that up, after we give the last piece, there's no more cloth. So we asked the priest that worked on the interviews and stuff, if we could get another piece of cloth, wrap it in that cloth, and he said yes. So we've done that, and I should have put some kind of color in the background so it could be seen better. But we have these laminated cards. They're $5, but they have a piece of cloth that was touched the blessed altar cloth that her body was put on when they exhumed her. So this touched, you could say, her remains. Because when I was there with her brother and the priest when we opened this altar cloth in the rectory, and some of the stains of her bone, it just was, if you didn't get the chills when you looked at this piece of cloth, there was something wrong with you, because you could see the stains of her bones, some of them on this cloth. So this did touch, it was wrapped in there for over a week. So, just so that
Would that be a second?
I was told it was gonna be a third. See, a piece of bone is her first, the cloth would be second, and then this touched her cloth.
And do you know her grandmother's name?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And then why is there an unsolved mystery on this?
Somehow, somebody got it and wrote a story. So it's just featured on Unsolved Mysteries,
Okay.
and I'm not sure why.
You mentioned New York a few times. Is there like some connection or somebody in New York where you have this Cajun New York connection?
The one that saw it on Unsolved Mysteries, none of them have ties to Louisiana. But the one that just had the baby in December, a nun or someone that she knows, knew a nun, and just put her in contact with this family in Opelousas. Actually, he's a doctor, and they help her get here. So it's just by word of mouth.
What year would you die?
12. 12. And on that note, when Father, well, let me tell you this. Father Dan was the priest there when we started going to church there. And he wanted the church to be kind of like the churches in Spain and Italy and all that. He wanted chandeliers in the church. Well, the parishioners back then said, and this was before I was a parishioner there, parishioners were all like, Father, we don't need to spend money on chandeliers. Well, when Charlene was young, she went to one of her friend's house who was a little better off than her or them, and they had a chandelier over their kitchen table. So Charlene always told her mama she wanted a chandelier in her house when she had her house. Well, after the parishioners found that out, they were okay with Father Dan putting the chandeliers. And Charlene died when she was 12. There are 12 chandeliers in that church. And the church is always pretty much open, so if you ever make a trip to Charlene's grave, go into the church. And the priest we have now, Father Corey Laverne, he's always playing this religious, soft music. It's just, it's like you, I don't know, you get this feeling God is touching you when you go in there with that music playing. But hold on a second.
What's the name of the church again?
St. Edward.
I have a friend in Eunice.
How many hours away is it?
Eunice, like it was like two and a half hours. My friend.
I'm gonna go ahead and pass this around. I have one because I'm the president, but, huh? So, here's your mic. I was given this because I'm the president of the foundation, and when I'm not president anymore, I'm gonna give it back. But each one of her siblings has one of these. The church has one. The foundation has one. At the bottom, there's a piece of brown bone. This is part of Charlene's bone. This is a first-class relic. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it around. A lot of people, they touch their medals, rosaries, rings. So y'all can feel free, just I need it back. Any more questions? Like too much to talk about, I already put it. I only brought a few items here today, but if anybody's interested in stuff, you can take one of those cards and email me or call me and we can work something out. I will tell y'all this story. There is how Charlene works anyway. Every year we go to Florida on vacation. We usually get up there on a Saturday. When we get there, we get our house, we unpack, we dress for church, we go to church. 2 years ago, we sit after communion, me and my husband come back from kneeling down, and I can finish his sentence, he can finish mine, I know what he's thinking before he thinks it. We both look at each other, and we both felt like somebody put their hands on our shoulders. And so we're looking at each other and saying, something told us we needed to talk to this family that's in the pew in front of us. We were on this end, they were on this end. So after church, we kind of hung around. We went up to them, introduced ourselves. We're from Louisiana and she's from Florida. And we told them, about Charlene. We told her the story, gave her some prayer cards. She started crying and she hugged me and my husband like she didn't want to let us go. Her husband was a construction worker and he can't work anymore and has depression really, really bad because both bones in his shoulders, both shoulders and both knees are bone on bone. So he can't work no more and he's limited to what he can do. Her daughter was born semi-deaf. She's going through therapy now. And she can kind of speak some, but she's embarrassed. It comes out the wrong way, so a lot of times she doesn't talk. Well, we became friends and, exchanged emails and Christmas cards. She told me that every night since that day we met them at church, they prayed to Charlene. Now, this is in Florida. Another family, I met the husband, they were from Florida also. The lady was pregnant and had the baby was detected to have Edwards syndrome, which is I'm not all that sure about all that stuff, but it's the worst chromosome, something with the worst chromosome
or defect. And so, the doctors were after them to terminate the pregnancy. But they said no. And so the husband came to Charlene's grave and prayed. We gave him stuff. We gave him prayer cards and all that. Well, they said that the baby probably was going to die before it even got close to being born. The baby was born, lived 9 days. The family and his other little siblings got to hold him and see him. They named him Jordy. And he ended up passing away, but like the daddy says, Charlene intervened and gave them 9 days with their son. He sent me videos of all the family with this little boy, and I came and looked at it without a box of Kleenex. It's really sad. So I've met all these people that I wouldn't have met if I wouldn't have this position. So, and then my dad, from 2015 to 2018, he stayed pretty much in the hospital. He'd go 45 days, be out for 2 or 3, go back to the hospital. He wore that prayer cloth. We tied it to his hospital band because he couldn't wear the silver medal that I gave him because it would be metal. And he always called Charlene his little girl. He went into surgery one night. What time was it? 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock on a Thursday, I think. The doctors had said if he didn't have surgery, he wasn't going to make it through the night. With surgery, it was still touch and go. Well, that was a Thursday night, Friday morning. At noon, we were able to see him in ICU, and he had all the tubes in his mouth and stuff, so he couldn't talk to us. But he does something like this. So and I have 2 sisters and a brother, and then Mama went in the room. I said, Daddy, you want to write? And he shook his head. We gave him a piece of paper and a pen, and he wrote something. We can make out the L-E-N-E, but his mama's name is Erlene. So we thought he was writing his mama's name, Erlene. Well, he was getting aggravated because we couldn't get what he was writing. He drew a small box, a big box, and then a small box. Well, none of us could guess what that was. So after, he was able to talk and stuff, he'd start to tell us the story that he was trying to write Charlene, and the boxes were her grave. We each have a laminated copy of that. But he said during surgery, she gave him some pointers. And he never was able to finish because he'd tear up, and then he passed away in 2018, so we'll never know the end of the story. But I have to believe, and my heart says so too, that the Friday he got discharged from the hospital, I followed Mom and Daddy back home to help her get him out the car and get him situated and stuff. And he's like, what day is it? And we said, Friday. And he kept saying, 4 days. 4 days. What day is it? Friday, Daddy. He said, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. He died in 4 days. So we have to wonder if that wasn't the thing Charlene, I'm trying to find message Charlene was giving him, that he had 4 days, to say goodbyes, get your stuff kind of in order. But he's buried with he always calls Charlene his little girl. He's got her in the coffin with him. So, any other questions?
So what year did the canonization process begin?
I think it was 2021 is when
It started a long time ago, but the ball had been dropped so many times for one reason or another. And I was under the impression, that it could be any priest that did the interview, because they have to have a priest that does the interviews with these people. And it's not just people that say they have miracles, it's relatives, friends from school, doctors, nurses. It's a list of people. And I thought it could be any priest that could do this, and that's another reason it takes so long, and it's been, but the priest has to have a canon law background, and not all priests have canon law. So that, because the priest that did it this time is from the Diocese of Alexandria, but the postulator from Rome somehow contacted him, and he's the one that got it done. Had he been picked a long time ago, because he's got a big devotion to Charlene and his mama too, and he's not gonna make his mama mad, so he's gonna get it done. But, you know, it's one of those things you learn as you go, because I don't thought any priest could talk and get the information, but it's not, it has to be in law. When they opened the boxes, Father Taylor, who's the priest that did the interviews, John Dale's brother was wanting to go, but was scared to go with their health and stuff. But he knew if he didn't go when they opened the boxes, he might not be here when they canonize her. So Father Taylor took it upon himself and bought their plane tickets the same time he bought his. So he was pretty much their shadow. And so they were able to go, but it took them weeks and weeks and weeks to get back to normal after that trip there and back. But at least they got to see, you know. And another thing was, Father Taylor said it's very unheard of that when they open these boxes of these saints, that a cardinal is there. And when the day they opened the boxes in Rome on Charlene, the cardinal himself was there and opened the boxes. It's like, okay, is that another sign? So it's like she's getting a little bit of special treatment over there. And then John Dale and his wife and a lot of her sisters went. They laughed because they brought the Pope some cracklings and boudin. Some corns and stuff. They were gonna ride. Well, I hope I did okay. I'm still in training. But
How long have you been the president?
3 years.
3 years, okay.
But I do have a full-time job also.
Yeah.
So that's like to be able to talk tonight, and it just so happened that this week was the busiest week at work. I worked 3 12-hour days, so I could be off today and tomorrow. But before coming here, since I have the relic, one of my husband's cousin's wife knows we have the relic. And so before Christmas, when we were at an Advent mission, she said, would you be open to going to Texas Children's Hospital with us? They have a couple little boys from, one I think is from Welch, and the other one I think is like Opelousas, kind of that area, Bill Platt. They're all over Facebook, so if you're on Facebook, you probably saw it. Eli and Buck. Both of them have been in the hospital for over 100-some days. And so I told Mom, her brother lives here, my godfather lives here in New Orleans, so I called her, I said, I'm going to give a talk, would you want to come? I said, we can visit Perrin. And so I always had in the back of my mind, I can't come all the way with Buck. Buck left the Children's Hospital in Houston a few weeks ago, for days. They went back home. He started running fever and not doing well. So somebody told him about the Manning's Children's Hospital here to give it a try. They're on a wait list to go to Cincinnati. The baby, and so I couldn't, my heart just wouldn't let me come all this way and not go visit him. So before coming this afternoon, I went to the hospital, placed the relic on him again, and prayed with him. This little baby is 7 months old and only weighs 10 pounds and 50 ounces. The happiest baby though, if you ever see him on Facebook, nothing's wrong with him if you look at the picture, his picture. But yeah, 7 months old and only 10 pounds and 50 ounces. Eli has been in the hospital and he's been, poor baby, I think he's 9, maybe 12, somewhere's right there. They've been in the hospital for a long time too, and he's got, when I asked my husband's cousin's wife what was wrong with him, she said it's what's not wrong with him. When I saw him, he was all connected to all these tubes and stuff, and I said, poor child, I said, he must be getting tired of getting picked on. The daddy tells me he was stuck 8 times while she was pregnant with him. He's already had a kidney transplant. He had jaundice so bad, I mean, it was, the picture I saw was unreal. But we prayed on him, and every day he gets a little bit stronger and stuff. But they do the rosary on Facebook every night for Eli. But they have a strong devotion to Charlene also.
Is Eli here or in Texas?
Eli's still in Texas.
Oh, okay. I have seen about him on Facebook.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to say he's 9, but if you look at the pictures on Facebook, his stomach looks like it's this big. it builds up with fluid and none of the doctors can find out how or what's going on and why is this. So he's got a, I did see though, they have him with, riding a bike the other day, trying to build his muscles because he's been in bed for over 100 days, so he's having to learn to walk. I don't think he's even eaten food yet, because they have to do some tests and stuff to make sure, you know, the food contents that they give him.
So when she was alive and closer to her death, why were people so drawn to this precious little girl? Like what was the?
I don't know if it was before she died or after, because, or in the hospital, she always offered her suffering for everybody else.
Mhm.
And I think Father Brennan helped, spread her word and stuff, and,
So she
how we
was
all
more-
can be saints,
Okay. So it's like a Saint Therese, like nobody really knew her
Right.
until later on.
She just lived a holy life. It was always, kind of what would God do. Very religious.
Yeah, it's a very similar, it reminds me very much of like Carlo Acutis. Yeah, because he too, when he was diagnosed with leukemia, it was like within 7 days, less than 2 weeks when he died. And he was also so holy, and he did the same, like he never complained, offered up his pain, so, it sounds so simple.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and I don't know, maybe if this Pope is wanting to canonize younger
Yeah.
children, to
Yeah.
show the younger people, generations
Yeah.
now, anybody can be a saint. You don't
Yeah.
have to be an older person to live a holy life and be a saint. And I think he's using some of these people, these children to kind of, because this world needs a lot of prayer and a lot of healing these days.
Yeah. True.
So when exactly, what time frame was, you're gonna said it, I'm sorry, yeah. When, her body was exhumed and the bones are in Rome?
No, her body will, as far as now, or as of right now, her body will never leave where it's at. It's gonna
Okay.
stay in Reshore. It may just be moved to another place on the church
Right,
grounds,
regardless of-
but it will never move from Reshore. Because that was one of the things the family said, we will sign off her body to the church, but we want her body to stay here. So
And when was that?
they exhumed her, I think, in 2022. I don't have my notes in front of me, and I catch myself going back and forth on the interstate, so. Anybody else? Don't forget, if y'all have petitions or something y'all want to pray for, write them on the boards, and I'll bring them, to her grave. People leave stuff all the time in that grave. Father called me called me or texted me, I can't remember, one Sunday afternoon, real late, and he said, you might want to go see what's at Charlene's grave. So I told my husband, I said, more than Father's calling me, I have to go see. Somebody left their crown stole and crown. And on it was Miss Eunice 2023. And so, you never know, because I'll pick up stuff sometimes, because if we left everything that people drop off at the grave, you wouldn't even be able to see the grave, or the graves next to it. So every now and then I'll go and I'll pick it up and I'll put it in our office, because if we have a museum, we want those things in the museum. So I went and picked it up, and I'm like, I don't know if somebody left it here so it can touch Charlene and you're gonna come back and pick it up. So I Googled, Miss Eunice 2020, I found out who it was. So when I contacted her, she said, oh, you found out who I was, huh? I'm like, you can't hide too much stuff on Facebook nowadays. But she said her and her mom had gone and visited the church, visited Charlene's grave, and she had that in her car. And she told her mom, told her mom she was gonna leave it, and her mom said, you sure? She says, what I'm gonna do with it, but stick it in the closet.
she said Charlene is the real queen, so she left her crown. So we have her stolen crown that one day will be displayed in the museum. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to mention on a related subject, talking about young people becoming saints. So those who aren't aware, Blessed Carlo Acutis is being canonized.
I think next month, huh?
This month.
This
April
month, yeah.
27th. 15-year-old Italian.
I was reading something on him the other day. His family didn't go to church.
Yep.
And he's the one that got his mama started going to church. As young as he was, you know.
And there's the exhibit, that St. Christopher's Parish has, displays of, what he did was he made a website, and so then they actually took that information, and, of Eucharistic miracles. So it's at St. Philip, this weekend, today, all the way through Sunday. No, it's at St. Philip. St. Philip.
And then it'll be Divine Mercy later on.
This isn't about Charlene, but this past summer, me and my daughter went to the Eucharistic conference in Indiana, and I know he passes around with the relic of St. Jude's arm, but I never thought about it like that till I heard him say that. He said, he let people touch it and stuff. He said, "Do you realize you touched the arm or the relic of the arm that was sitting next to Jesus at the Last Supper?" People, we don't think about stuff like that, but that was kind of like, wow.
St. Jude's arm. And then you pray that somebody else, St. Jude's arm.
Anybody else?
You said she was the godmother of one of her younger siblings, but she was so young when she died.
But I guess back then, because the brother that she's a godmother to is buried right next to her grave, I guess back then you could, or maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I'm my brother's godmother, and I think I was like maybe 14.
Oh. They changed
As
it.
long as one of the other godparents is confirmed, you could be. At one time, it might have changed, but that's,
How many siblings are still alive?
I'm not real sure. That's all questions I need to ask John Dale.
Is it in that book?
No, that's just Father Brennan's book, on him and Charlene. Let me go back and tell you, there's so much and I don't have my notes. Y'all know, any of y'all know Father Kale? I think he was raised and born in Cecilia. But him and Father Brennan, which is that priest, they were good friends. And Father Kale always hoped to have his own parish. And so one day he called Father Brennan, and he told Father Brennan, says, "The bishop called me, I have some good news and some bad news." So Father Brennan said, "Well, what's the good news?" He said, "The bishop's giving me my own parish." Father Brennan says, "Well, what's the bad news?" He said, "It's in Reshore, and I don't know where that's at." So Father Brennan drove him to Reshore and showed him. And the bishop was sending him there to build a church, because it was just a wooden little country church. And so, Father Kale came, and he knew that his job there was to build a new church. And so they said the first collection, he only collected like $68. So he's like, "How does the bishop want me to build a church with $68 in the collection?" So when he told Father Brennan that, Father Brennan said, "Michelle, you need to visit your neighbor." And there's some real, country folks. So Father Kale says, "Well, who's my neighbor?" So Father Brennan had to show him where Charlene was buried and show him, where Charlene was. So Father Kale started praying to Charlene. The church was finished in 2 or 3 years earlier than what it was planned to, and he had the monies and the funds to build the church.
I was just thinking of Mother Angelica.
And Father Kale has since passed away, but they had come to talk. They visited the grave. I forget what it was for, but it was the middle of the winter. It was real breezy that day, windy, and cold. And I remember Father Kale because he had a big devotion for Charlene, and he's one of the priests that got one of the relics that's passing around. And he's in his wheelchair. Somebody built him up, and he's at the foot of Charlene's grave, and he'd say a few things, and he said, "Hush, and then he'd say a few things, and he's very country. "Hush, how my little girl?" And it was just something to see a priest, because you don't see that.
was giving a talk to a group of Catholic school kids, and I think they were coming from Lake Charles, and our priest is from DeQuincy. So one of the parents that were with him says, "Is that Father Corey?" I'm like, "Yeah." Father Corey was kind of in like some lounging pants and a t-shirt. One of the kids says, "I never saw a priest wear pajamas." You know, it's some funny things that people come to see Charlene and see other stuff. You know, we always have prayer cords in our purse, computer bags, glove compartments. Between me and my daughter and my kids and my husband, we passed so many of them out. The lady that started the prayer cords or putting them together, she's in her 90s now, and she kind of lost count, but last number she had was like 165,000 prayer cords put together. Actually, we get together tomorrow. We get together on the second Friday of the month. We go to 9 o'clock mass, then walk over to the church hall, and we have the prayer. We have the card with her picture on it, with the prayer in the back, and then we have another cord that goes with it. That some people don't know what a prayer cord is or how to use it, so it explains. And then we put the cloth with her picture stamped on it in the pack. So we have those 3 things in the packet, and then Father comes in and blesses them. I'm trying to get it where I can get some of the Catholic school, well, any school, but more so the Catholic schools, that kids that need service hours to plan maybe on a Saturday or Sunday, because now every time she gets more and more popular, we get more and more requests. The postage lately that I'm having to pay for is out of this world.
I can only imagine. So, how far is Eunice from Richard?
It's not horrible.
Like
Maybe
10
10 minutes,
10
15
minutes?
minutes, yeah.
Okay, so I can say, and this is what I'm just thinking, like the Lord's always talking